Hi, it's Mrs. Tellas. We're going to go ahead and do the second day of 4.3, which last week we did parallel lines, and this week we're going to write equations. We're going to learn how to do perpendicular, and we're going to review paraline. We're also going to be able to tell the difference between the two. All right, so last week we learned that parallel lines had the same slope. This week we're learning that perpendicular lines have slopes that are opposite reciprocals. So opposite sign is what that means. And remember that reciprocal means flip. So if I categorize these, I could put them together perpendicularly. So these two would be perpendicular because they're the opposite sign and they're reciprocals of each other. These two would be perpendicular because they're opposite signs and they're reciprocals. These two would be perpendicular because they're opposite signs and they're reciprocals. Those would be parallel because they're the same. And these would also be parallel because they're the same. Okay, so if I figure out which two lines are perpendicular, I need the slope for each of them. Well, the easiest one is in the middle because it's already in slope-intercept form, so I can just pull the slope out very quickly. So the slope on B is 3. The other two need put into slope-intercept form so I can pull the slope out. So I'm going to go ahead and solve from here. So we're going to subtract 2x to get the x on the right side. I'm going to work my way sideways. So 6y equals negative 2x minus 3. And then I'm going to divide all of them by 6, which is going to give me y equals negative 1/3 x minus 1/2. So my slope for A is negative 1/3. So I've got a slope for A as negative 1/3 and a slope for B is 3. Well, those two are perpendicular. They're opposite sign reciprocals. Let's figure out C. So same thing, I want to move the x over. So I'm going to subtract 18x on both sides. And then I'm going to divide by negative 6. So that gives me y equals 3x minus 3/2. So my slope here is positive 3. So it looks like B and C would be parallel because they're exactly the same slope. And A is perpendicular to both B and C. So I can figure out whether they're parallel or perpendicular based on their slopes. All right, so parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So it's one of the three. So the top one, my slope is 3. I can see that very clearly according to slope-intercept form. And then the other one needs solve for y. So I'm going to subtract 3x. So y equals negative 3x plus 1. Well, my slope here is negative 3. These would be neither because although they're different signs, they're not reciprocals of each other because the reciprocal of 3/1 is 1/3. So to be perpendicular, it would have need to have been negative 1/3. So this one is neither. Okay, let's look at this one. So neither of these are in the right form. So let's send the 2 through. So y minus 2 equals 2x minus 2. And we'll add 2 on both sides. So y equals 2x. So my slope here is 2 on the top one. And then on this one, if I subtract, whoops, I don't want to subtract that one. I want to subtract the x. So if I subtract x on both sides, and then I divide by 2, that gives me y equals negative 1/2 x minus 3. So that slope is negative 1/2. Those two are perpendicular because look how they're opposite signs and they're reciprocals of each other. So these are perpendicular. Okay, and my guess is this one's parallel, but let's check it out. So let's go here. So my slope on the top one is negative 1. I can tell that because there's a negative 1 right there in front of x. This one needs to be solved for y, so I'm going to subtract 3x. And then I'm going to divide negative 3. So that's y equals x, or 1x minus 4/3. So my slope here is positive 1. Well, they're opposite signs, but if I flip 1, 1 is 1/1, and if I flip it here, it's 1/1. So these are also perpendicular. Yeah, because these two negatives make a positive. All right, so remember, perpendicular slope is the opposite sign and it's the reciprocal. So we're going to do the same thing we did for parallel. We're going to figure out what the perpendicular line is to this line, and we are going to use this point. So it's got to be perpendicular to this, and it's got to pass through this. So let's start by solving for y because we need the slope. So we're going to subtract 7x on both sides, and then we're going to divide by -2 from each piece. So 7/2 x minus 3/2. So my slope is 7/2. And my perpendicular slope then is -2/7. I flipped it and I changed the sign to negative because it was positive. So now I can do my plugging. So I'm going to use this slope right here because that's the perpendicular slope and this point. This is x and this is y. And I'm plugging it in to the generic slope-intercept formula. So in for y, I'm going to put -1. The slope I'm using is -2/7, and the x is 4. This is a major fraction problem here. So that's -8/7. Okay, and you could put that into Desmos or you could multiply straight across. And then I add 8/7 to both sides, which gives me 1/7 for B. So my final answer is y equals -2/7 x plus 1/7. Okay, kind of a hard one. Came out swinging a little. All right. Well, let's do this one. So we need a slope so that we can flip it and change the sign. So we're going to subtract 5x. And we're going to divide by 2. So that's -5/2 x plus 1. So my slope here is -5/2, which means the perpendicular slope, if I switch it and change the sign, is 2/5. So that's the one I want to use. I want to use the 2/5 because I'm looking for the perpendicular line that goes through 0, 6. So 0 is x and 6 is y. So if I use the generic slope intercept formula, 6 would go in for y, m is 2/5, and x is 0. So 6 is B because that just cancels out because it's 0. So my final answer then is y equals 2/5 x plus 6. All right, I want you to press pause and I want you to try this one and see if you get it right. Remember, you need to put this in slope-intercept form. This is your x and this is your y. Don't forget once you get the slope to flip it and change the sign. Okay, give that a try. All right, so I'm going to subtract 2x on both sides and divide by -5. So that gives me a slope of 2/5 x minus 3/5. So my slope is 2/5, which means my perpendicular slope is -5/2, right? And I'm using this point. So x is 4 and y is 7. So if I plug it into the generic slope formula, y would be 7, m is -5/2, x is 4 plus b. And I can use my calculator, my Desmos calculator, to come up with it. Or I can do canceling like I learned in middle school. That's a 1 and that's a 2. So that's -10. Add 10 to both sides. So B is 17. So my final answer then would be y equals -5/2 x plus 17. So if you got that, good job. Good job if you got the slope. Remember, we had to switch it and change the sign. We had to plug all this in. And then this part right here with the fractions, we could have used Desmos for. I just did canceling for it. Okay, so if I'm doing perpendicular to this, this is a vertical line. So perpendicular to a vertical would be horizontal. So as I look at it, I can reason through it by graphing. So x is 6 would be a straight up and down line at 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right here. Whoop, need a different pencil. So it would be straight up and down right here. That's not very straight, but good enough. All right, and if I want it to go through 9, -3, 9, 1, 2, 3. Well, that means it has to be a horizontal line right here. So instead of x, I'm going to use y, and I'm going to use the y number in the ordered pair, so it's y -3. So I can do it without the picture. I was just showing you. So if we do this one without the picture, if it's a vertical, I want it to be horizontal. And because I want the y, I want that second number because that's the y position. So y equals 2 is the answer. Okay, and you're going to do the worksheet that goes with this section, not that assignment in the book. And then I've also put the key on Canvas so that you can check it to make sure that you're doing it correctly. So this is the last section. We'll be preparing for the test after this. So thanks for watching.